Hi, this is Robert Kiyosaki, and you're listening to Capital Hacking. This is the most important thing you can listen to today.
Is the one.
I have a dream.
With great power comes great responsibility.
I could do this all day.
This is it. Don't get scared now.
They may take our lives, but they'll never take our freedom.
Cinderella story out of nowhere.
It's in the hole. That the only thing we have to fear is fear itself.
Capital Hacking begins in 3, 2, 1.
Welcome back to The Big Show. John, it is awesome to be here with you, as always.
Guys, if you are driving, make sure your seatbelt's on. If you are listening and you're walking or whatever you're doing, pay attention to this show. Colin O'Brady brings so much wisdom to having an ironclad mindset, Josh. He's a bestseller. He actually a bestseller in multiple books. His newest book is called The 12-Hour Walk. It's impacted hundreds of thousands of people. Colin is a 10-time world record holder. First solo man to walk across the Antarctica just pulling a sled. With no supplies, no team, no nothing. He rode the Drake Passage. He's going to talk about that, where he never rode 12 weeks before this and broke a world record. What else, Josh?
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. When you secured him for the show, and I was really honored. He's probably one of the most famous guests we've had. I thought, is it intimidating? We're having a 10-time world record holder, and these are not just like shooting a great basketball world record. These are like could die. He could have died in almost all of these world records. And so I thought, how does he translate that power he has within his head? And he nailed it. So here's the tease. You listen to a gentleman who did those things, he's going to help you unleash that kind of energy in your life, even though you're not called to probably you're not called to go to Mount Everest or cross Antarctica. He's going to teach you how this can change your life and how you could do something right now that will break through those barriers.
Yes. And by the way, Colin's been on Joe Rogan twice. He's been on Ed Milet. He's been on the Jimmy Fallon show. But the cool thing is people are going to start saying, I heard Colin O'Brady on the Capital Hacking show.
Yeah, let's go. As always, we did it, John. You got us superstar status guests.
It is so exciting today, guys, to have Colin O'Brady on our show. Colin and I met in beautiful Atlanta at Lake Oconee at the GoBundance event. He was a keynote speaker there, knocked it out of the park. I grabbed him on his way out because he's a super busy guy. I said, hey, would love to have you on the big show. Would you jump in? He gave me his email. We've gone back and forth, and today we have Colin. So exciting. Colin, welcome to the show. Can you give us a little background on your story?
Great to be here. Thanks for having me. And yeah, it was a great event there with GoBundance to meet you and such an incredible community of people that are out there, changing the world, working hard, building cool companies, which is the type of people I love to be around, passionate folks. Yeah, a little background. Wow, I don't know where to begin. I guess I'll give you a little, maybe top level bio. We get into some stories or whatever you guys want to talk about. But I guess what I'm most known for being a professional endurance athlete. I have 10 world records, including I was the first person in history to cross the entire continent of Antarctica, solo, unsupported, and fully human powered. So no resupplies of food or fuel, dragging a 375-pound sled behind me for 1,000 miles over 54 days all alone across Antarctica. So big adventures like that. I was the first person, me and a team of folks were the first people to row a boat across Drake Passage. For those that don't know what that is, that's the most dangerous stretch of ocean on the planet. So from the southern tip of South America to Antarctica, we're talking 40-foot swells, icebergs, penguins, whales, all in a tiny little rowboat with no mast motor or anything like that. Just an open hole little rowboat in the middle of the ocean. So did that, climbed a bunch of big mountains, climbed Everest a couple times, couple world records in the high Himalayas and the seven summits and things of that nature. And in addition to that, just passionate about business. I've applied some of that mindset stuff to a couple other businesses that I've started and exited, and written New York Times bestselling memoir, some foothold in Hollywood and other things. So yeah, those are kind of a career resume, I guess, high points. But there's been lots of ups and downs along the way, and bumps and scrapes and bruises, just like anyone who gets this level. So don't let the resume fool you like it's all been perfect, smooth sailing, because it sure hasn't been. But here we are.
Not only that blows my mind. 10 world records, right? 10 world records, including the Antarctica. I got so many questions, but John, feel free to go first.
Well, I was just going to say, your intro right there, Colin, is so super humble, and that's one of the things that drew me to you when you were speaking on the Tribe of Millionaires podcast, because I'm like, man, this dude, he's done so many things that most people wouldn't even attempt. It wouldn't even cross their mind. And if you remember, one of my questions was, I was the first one to actually I think someone did grab the mic before me, and then I grabbed the next mic. But I said, man, how do you even figure out like what you want to do next? Like that was mind blowing to me, because who thinks they're going to take a rowboat across the Drake Passage? And by the way, guys, in his intro, he didn't tell you 12 weeks prior to that, Colin never even rowed a boat. Like he said, the first time he went out, he like flipped a rowboat on like calm water. Like dude, you have so many stories. So just break down that one story there of deciding to row a boat across the Drake Passage.
Yeah, so I had just completed the on foot solo crossing the continent of Antarctica, and it wasn't my first world record, but that one really took fire, in the media and the press. Ultimately, I think there was something like 2 billion earned media impressions, like 8 front page New York Times articles, on Joe Rogan multiple times. A lot of people knew about it. And humbled by all that attention, of course. But then, of course, the natural question, it happens anyways, but certainly at scale where millions of people have about what's next, what's next, what's next, what's next. And so, for me, it's not always, can I one up myself? Can I make it harder and better? It's mostly like what speaks to my soul. And the question that I really ask myself as a filtering question, even though there's so many other people asking me what's next, is, if I could tell nobody about this, if I am just going to do this, would I do this just for me? And if the answer is yes, then I'm curious to explore. If the answer is like, you know what, I don't actually really want to take a rowboat out there. I'm only trying to do that to just get the next television deal or the next business deal, or to impress this person or that person, or an article. Like it's too dangerous. The stakes are too high. And really just the authenticity of my soul just isn't lit up by that pursuit. But I had been thinking about a while, like, wow, like I've been in some insane landscapes. I've been on the North Pole, which is the frozen ocean, right? I've been, in the high Himalaya on Mount Everest. I've been, across, lots of sort of these crazy land masses, Antarctica, et cetera. But I was like, but the ocean, I mean, that's the, true, the majority of our planet is the ocean. And I've spent a little bit of time here and there, open water swimming and surfing and things like that. But I really thought, I was like, I've never really been in the open ocean. This guy who I knew very loosely, kind of a friend of a friend of a friend, had reached out to me, and he's like, hey, I'm actually the most renowned ocean rower in the world. He has something like, I don't know, 20 or 30 world records in ocean rowing. And it's a fringe sport that I knew a little bit about. And he goes, but the holy grail of this sport is something no one's done, and it's a crossing of Drake Passage. He goes, I've crossed the Indian Ocean, I've crossed the Atlantic Ocean, I've crossed the Pacific, and these are bigger, much further oceans. But the Drake Passage is the convergence of the Southern Ocean, the Atlantic, and the Pacific, which is why it's such a crazy, violent. There's basically 3 of the world's largest ocean currents converging in this one space. And to paint a picture of Drake Passage, small tangent here, there's been 20,000 people who have lost their lives in seafaring in the Drake Passage historically. I mean, it is a gnarly stretch of ocean. In the speech I gave to you guys, I showed you a video, just to open it. It's like a massive military or cruise ship with waves crashing over the top of a couple 100 feet tall boat. I mean, this thing is Drake Passage is violent. Google it or YouTube it or whatever. Just Drake Passage, you'll find a million, things. And recently as 10, 15 years ago, there was a modern cruise ship that sunk in the Drake Passage. I mean, that goes to show. It's like, oh, people lost their lives back in the 1600s when boats were made out of wood and they didn't know where they were going. It's like, this is the recent times, there's still, issues out there. So for us to take a rowboat out there was nothing short of audacious. But what was interesting is when, I was approached with kind of knew about this idea. This guy had actually been working on this project for a few years, but couldn't get it off the ground. There was trouble with the funding. It was complicated, logistically hard to find the right people, whatever. And so we basically teamed up on that. When he told me, I was like, this is an amazing idea. Let me explore this. Let me look into it a little further. And I got really excited about it. And so ultimately, I helped him with the logistic and the business side that really brought it to life. I ended up bringing on Discovery Channel as a partner. They filmed a multi-million-dollar documentary about it, which helped us also fund the project, and sponsors and things like that. But getting back to like why and how I decided that is like, I, to your point, had never rowed a boat anywhere in my life, like literally everywhere. I signed this deal with Discovery and I actually called them up. We're leaving in 3 months to go across Drake Passage. Like, hey guys, just one thing. Thanks for, signing that contract, sending that 7-figure check. I've actually never rowed a boat anywhere, like ever. Not at summer camp, not in college, not whatever. And for me, obviously we can laugh about it. It's funny. It's like, well, why the hell did you think that you could pull this thing off? Like, that's insane. Yeah, the other guy, he rowed some boats, and I listed a couple other guys that I knew, guys who I went to college with. I swam at Yale, but I listed a couple guys who were rowers at Yale when I was there, so great rowers. But what was interesting is comparing the two of us. So not the guy who's the ocean rower, but my 2 college classmates. These guys were national champions, Yale collegiate rowers, legit rowers. We graduated college 15, 20 years ago. It's not like this was like yesterday, right? We're all in our, late 30s to 40s, but amazing rowers, technical rowers, best in the country, best in class, types of rowers. But they'd never done a big expedition. They'd never been out there for weeks or months at a time, wet, cold, exhausted, devastated, wishing they hadn't made this decision, all the things, which is something that I had done. And so it was actually what I realized is there was a beautiful complementary skill set, which is like, they definitely, from a technical rowing perspective, were bringing something that I didn't have. Obviously, I had to learn that from them. But on day 3 and day 4, when everyone's sleep deprived, exhausted, tired, throwing up from seasickness, whatever, like, they were looking at me like, yo, I usually race on a rowboat for 5 minutes. One of the things that I, in conclusion here, in 2 things. One thing that I share with you in my speech, which I'm a big believer of, which is this phrase that I call be or not. Like, it's easy to be like, oh, I'm not a rower. I'm not a business person. I'm not a runner. I'm not a this. And it's like, yeah, I wasn't a rower in this moment, but one word changes that. I'm not a rower yet. And then I went out, in the Willamette River in Portland, Oregon, got a little rowboat, rowed for, a half of a morning, fell off the rowboat a couple times. And I was like, I am a rower. I'm not a good rower, but I am a rower now. It's like you take that first step, and I look back, you look at, Stephen King, you look at Kobe Bryant, you look at the greats in any sort of space. Like, Stephen King at some point had to write a few sentences before he could write 62, New York Times bestselling books. Like, Kobe Bryant at some point had to take his first jump shot, but we know him as the great, Kobe Bryant, MVP, all-time great. And so it's like, I remind myself of that is like, everyone had to take that first shot. Everyone had to write that first sentence. In this case, I had to take my first, row of a rowboat. But instead of saying, I'm not this, I'm not that, I say, be or not, become it. Own that as part of your identity. Like, I'm a rower and I'm going to make that happen. And that mindset has definitely served me. And realizing that underneath the rowing acumen of this project, what it actually took was grit, resilience, desire, passion. And it was like, I have all of those things. I just need to learn on the top, how to, put my hands across the oars. Like that's a learnable skill. Those other things, are learnable, but they're deeper inside of me, and I carry those with me no matter where I go.
Yeah. I mean, there's something there that just so correlates to what John and I are on a mission to do with this podcast and with this work, is the human capital, the ability, that the accumulations of sufferings and accomplishments and failures creates, I call it, a great return on investment for your human capital. So we always talk about, if you put $1 in, does it come back as $1.50? That's return on cash capital. But human capital, I imagine, could be summed up in Colin's philosophy as doing those hard things creates even more power. And I know you have such great curriculum. If you only had a few minutes with someone and you wanted to impart your wisdom to them, how would you tell them that give them self-worth and give them the ability to see a bigger future? What would you tell that person off the street?
I love what you say about the accumulation of life's experiences, right? I think that we, in our modern society, one of the biggest fears is fear of failure, right? And I don't really look at it that way. One of my, if I just had a few minutes with somebody, one thing certainly I would impart is, it's part of it. I say failure plus perseverance equals success. smile at all those challenges, smile, at those moments of failure, because they're actually teaching you. Every place I've ever gotten to with success has come through deep learnings and setbacks along the way. But the other thing that, I think really hits home for me to take that, extend that one step further. So I'll use the rowboat analogy real quick, which is when we got in the middle of the Drake Passage, it was some of the worst days of my entire life. I mean, it's 40-foot swells. We're freezing. We're cold. At points, we couldn't row against it. So we actually had to get inside the holds. We had 6 guys on this boat, and this boat was only built for like 3 people. So inside of the holds, we are like, because we have been alternating. But once the storms are so bad, we can't be on the deck. We're now, imagine me like, in a fetal position, wet and cold, holding on to a 6'4" Icelandic dude in the trunk of a Honda Civic space with no windows, getting bashed around in 40-foot swells for 25 hours at a time. And, I'll just say this. I also got seasick and I threw up in that little cabin. So not only am I smashing around in the middle of the ocean, but it's like with like my throw up, like kind of, sloshing around the bottom. I mean, we're talking about discomfort. We're talking about the low moments. And then when we're successful. And we reached the shores of Antarctica, and there are penguins jumping off icebergs. There's humpback whales on the bow of our boat. There's the most beautiful, external landscape you've ever seen. It's pristine. Antarctica, the coast of Antarctica is just, it's a sight to be seen. It's incredible. And there's this photo of us. We lit flares, the signal flares from our boat that we're just celebrating as we literally touch our boat to the edge of Antarctica and have this great achievement. It was one of the peak moments of my entire life. And what I realized is I started thinking about life on the spectrum of 1 to 10. So 1 being our low moments. That's me in that, in the middle of that storm being like, fuck, this is terrible, right? And then 10 being our high highs, getting to the shores of Antarctica. And what I realized in this moment is that our 1s and our 10s are connected. I actually don't reach my 10s in spite of my 1s, but rather reach my 10s because of my 1s. And, if what I realize is that, what I tell the person off the street, to your question, which is that like most people spend their life in what I call the zone of comfortable complacency between 4 and 6, afraid to take any risk, afraid to have any risk or failure. And why? Because we think we don't want the discomfort of a 1 or a 2. But to me, it works like a pendulum. Like if you take the 1s off the table, you take the 10s off the table. You actually need to create the necessary momentum to reach the 10s by actually going through some difficulties, some setbacks, some learning, some failures along the way. Like that's actually part of the process. And I realized that if someone had took a private jet or a yacht and, actually dropped me off on the coast of Antarctica, right where I landed that boat, it would have been a 7 or an 8 because it is that beautiful or that spectacular. But it was a 10 because of actually the challenge, the grit to actually go out in the rowboat and get through that. And so if I had that 3 minutes, end of my 3 minutes here with this person, I would say like, take some risks, go out there, fall flat on your face, make some mistakes. It's in doing that, in actually accepting the proverbial cold, wet, feelings on your face, the actual full tapestry of life. That is where your human capital builds. And that actually what gives you the stepping stones or the building blocks to get out of that zone of comfortable complacency and reach those true peak 10-10 moments in life.
Man, you nailed it. And it's so awesome because I was going to talk to you about the 1s and the 10s and the comfortable complacencies of the 4 to the 6, because that's what really impacted me when you were speaking at Lake Oconee. You got to go through the 1s to get to those 10s. And I want to switch a little bit and highlight. You wrote an amazing book that I read. It's called The 12-Hour Walk, and thank you for writing that, by the way. But I actually want you to talk a little bit about why you wrote that. I have an understanding on why, but I want our audience to hear, because I want them to pick that book up and learn so much about you and your life.
Yeah. So 12-Hour Walk is my second book. My first book is called The Impossible First. That was a memoir about my solo crossing of Antarctica. And then the 12-Hour Walk is something I'm really passionate about. As I'll share here, it's more than a book. It's a global movement. It's an invitation. It's something that you can take into your own life. It's not just, hey, read my book. It's a nice story, which again, I appreciate good storytelling that moves people. The Impossible First is that, and New York Times is so I'm proud of that. But the 12-Hour Walk is a gift. it's an offering of sorts, and which I'll explain in a second. A quick, very, very brief backstory is during COVID, I had, just my life is going on. I'm book tour of my other book. I'm about to go to Everest. I've got some plans, and all of a sudden, just like everyone else, the world shuts down. I was supposed to actually climb the Chinese side of Everest in April of 2020. So it's obvious I didn't get on a plane and fly to China in April of 2020. Just like everyone else, I was locked in my house. So I'm on the Oregon coast in my house with my dog and my wife, and we're just sitting there, kind of twiddling our thumbs while the world's falling apart. And I get into a pretty negative headspace. I'm usually a pretty positive guy, very optimistic, but I find myself in a bit of a funk, honestly. My wife at one point says, you haven't changed out of your pajamas in a week. You've been doom scrolling the news, just like all the updates on my phone, social media, whatever. And so I was like, when was the last time I felt, in flow? And I actually said, it seems weird, but when I was walking across Antarctica, I had no music, no podcast. I was by myself. I was just these long days alone in my thoughts. And I tapped into these deep spiritual flow states inside my mind, body, and soul. And so I said to Jenna the next day, I said, hey, I'm going to go for a long walk out on the coast. Don't worry about me. I'll come back around dinner time. Walk out the front door on the Oregon coast, super quiet. No one's on the streets. It's COVID lockdown. And I'm walking around, and 20 minutes in, my phone buzzes in my pocket. Buddy of mine's just texting me, and I pull up my phone, about to text him back. And I'm like, what am I doing? Like, I'm out. The whole point is being out here. Like, I don't need to text him right now. And so I put my phone in airplane mode, and I start walking. And I end up staying out there for about 12 hours. And I get back to my front door, walk in, my dog jumps up on my lap. And Jenna says to me, she goes, you're back. And I said, yeah, I told you I'd be back around dinner time. And she goes, no. She like looks at me and kind of leans in, and she was like, no, you're back. Like, I can see your spirit, has returned. And she's right. Like, it had been this very clarifying piece for myself. And I had found this sort of deep connection to myself again. And so over the next couple of weeks, as we all were doing during COVID, you're FaceTiming with friends, doing Zoom meetings, trying to figure out what the hell is going on in the world, right? And people were like, what are you doing? And I just started mentioning to random people, it's, I did this thing, and I ended up walking for 12 hours, whatever. People like, wow, that's interesting. Before I knew it, I had friends, work colleagues, my mother-in-law, who's 77 years old, say like, I want to try that. And so I kind of just created some loose parameters around it, which I was like, hey, this isn't about how you don't have to walk the whole time. I took breaks, sit down as much as you want, bring food with you, like relax. It's really just about taking a day, no music, no podcast, turn the news off, putting your phone on silent, and spending a day by yourself. Walk wherever you want. It doesn't matter how far you go. And before I knew it, dozens upon dozens of people in my network, and then my, 1 degree away from my network, which brought me like, I did this 12-hour walk, man, changed my life. I came back more creative, more cracked open, more wanting to connect with my family, just this one thing after the next, different for every single person. And so it kind of struck me in this moment. I was like, it's kind of a funny thing to say, although of course I'm proud of going to Antarctica and doing that for 54 days in a row across the endless white abyss of Antarctica, what I realized is that's unattainable for most people. And most people never want to go freeze their butt off alone by themselves. But we all are seeking a creative exploration, a deeper connection to ourselves, as you said, an investment in our own human capital. And although 12 hours at first seems like a long time, like the subtitle of the book is Invest One Day, Unlock Your Best Life. And I have seen people in 12 hours, just 12 hours, half of a day investing in themselves, make dramatic changes. And so the 12-hour walk book itself walks through a bunch of common limiting beliefs that we all have. I don't have enough money. I don't have enough time. What if I fail? I don't like being uncomfortable, etc. Through the lens of very exciting storytelling from my adventures. So it's not some academic textbook. It'll light your mind up with fun stories and entertaining metaphors, etc. But at the end of the day, I can sum the book up in one sentence, which is this book is an invitation to walk out your front door, turn off your phone, and spend a day by yourself. And as a result, there's a whole website, there's a whole global movement that I've built. And now at this point, there's been, I think, over 100,000 or more than that people around the world in 40 different countries. People take the 12-hour walk every single day. It's completely, free to do. I know, John, you said you're going to take your 12-hour walk later this year at some point.
Yeah, before you hit your 11th world record.
Amazing. So yeah, that's what the 12-hour walk is. And to me, it's been just this really, from a place in my heart of just saying, hey, sometimes the most powerful things in life investments in ourselves are very simple. And so to have something that can really open people's minds and hearts and spirits, that is, again, it's an investment of your time. It's half of one day, but I've seen it have outsized return on investment, to use your guys' language.
It reminds me of some of the gem that was in the Miracle Morning with Hal Elrod, of just quieting yourself. Now, a gentleman like yourself, we only have a few more moments. We're excited about some news we're about to break on this show, right? John teased it. There's an 11th world championship, world record coming soon this summer 2024. Tell us a little bit about that, and what's your excitement about that? Why'd you choose it too? That one, but go ahead.
Yeah, so I am attempting on June 5th. It starts on June 15th. It's called the Race Across America. It's widely considered the world's toughest bicycle race. Distance-wise, it's further than the Tour de France. So it starts in Oceanside, California, essentially San Diego on the Pacific coast, and ends in your guys' neck of the woods in Atlantic City, New Jersey on the boardwalk. So it's a 3,000-mile bicycle race. But unlike the Tour de France or something like that that's in stages, this is a continuous, non-stop adventure. So when the gun goes off, you're riding your bike and kind of sleep if you dare, if you will. I'm entering it in the pairs division. So me and my childhood best friend, Lucas Clark, we met in the first grade. We've been hanging out since we were 5 years old. So we're about 35 years deep into our friendship. He's an amazing cyclist. And we are going to attempt to not just win this year's edition of the Race Across America, but go one step further. Our stated goal is to actually set the world record for the fastest to ever complete the course as a pairs team. And so that means one of us is always riding at any given time. So basically he's either riding or I'm either riding. There's going to be no breaks along the way. We're going to ride 24 hours around the clock. And our goal is to do it in under 6 days. So our project is called Sub 6. So you do the math on that, but 3,000 miles in 6 days, that's 500 miles of riding a bike. It's roughly 20 miles per hour average. And keep in mind, we're not just riding on flat roads, right? There's 140,000 feet of vertical gain on this ride, of course, over the Rocky Mountains. But even if you get out to Appalachia and in parts of the East Coast, it's consistently up, down, up, down. And we're hoping, for fingers crossed, that we're going to get some favorable winds, across the Great Plains of Kansas, et cetera. But, whatever the winds are doing, if that's a direct headwind across the Great Plains and we're getting battered by that, that'll be almost as hard as riding a bike uphill. So it's a fun project. The part of the reason that I was inspired to do this project, I love trying, as you've seen from this interview, different sports. If I am successful in setting this world record, I will have world records in polar exploration, mountaineering, rowing, now cycling, a bunch of different, type of activities, which is cool. But also for me, this one comes from a pretty heart-centered place. My childhood best friend, he's an amazing cyclist, and he's like, I've always wanted to do one of the big projects with you. And to me, when I think about investing in human capital, have that conversation with my 70-year-old, 80-year-old self many years in the future and go, what stands out? What do you look forward to? And it's not going to be the 11th world record in terms of like the medal, the proverbial medal on the mantle. It's going to be having shared experiences with people that I love. And so the world record, of course, gives us this incredible framework to go for that, but it's beyond the 6 days. Lucas and I, a few weeks ago, flew to, with one of our sponsors, LaCall, that we went out and did this thing at the McLaren F1 Formula One track on the wind tunnel out there and spent a couple days optimizing our position to wind tunnel. But what did that do? It provided Lucas and I, my childhood best friend, an experience to go over to Europe and learn about our bikes. And we're training together. And we're this. So it's not just the 6 days of this adventure together, but it's been a year plus of having this incredible goal to be passion driven with my childhood best friend. And then lastly, and you guys are hopefully sound like going to be there at the finish line to greet us. But this is a team effort. So this is a support, unlike my Antarctica project, which was unsupported, where I take all my gear. I was out there by myself for 54 days. This is the opposite. This is supported, which means when I'm not riding my bike and Lucas is out there riding, I'm in a vehicle and vice versa. But it starts to be a big logistical puzzle if you want to set the world record, which means you don't want to have any gaps. You want those transitions to be like a Formula One pit crew. You want to have the right food, the right nutrition, all this sort of stuff. So we actually have about 15 other people who are supporting this project with us 4 different vehicles. I won't get into all the nitty gritty of the logistics, but it's a complex logistical puzzle. But what excites me about that is I've done a lot of these projects, either solo or whatnot. But when I look at this project, it's like almost like Lucas and I almost have the easiest job. We just had to get out there and ride our bikes. We have 15 other people taking care, here, wow. Eat this, drink this, let me rub your legs. Are you tired? Any sort of thing like that. And awesome. So when I picture myself standing on the Atlantic City boardwalk in success, when I'm visualizing that moment, it's not, this moment of Lucas and I, just the two of us standing there, pouring champagne over each other's head with a trophy. It's me arm in arm with 15 people saying, hey, we did this together. And this is truly a team effort. And when I think about what lights humans up in general, we have a loneliness epidemic in our culture. People are alone, and to have this deep sense of teamwork, camaraderie, and belonging, that at this point is what's inspiring me to go after the 11th world record. The external accomplishment of that is really just the icing on the cake.
I love it, man. That was amazing. By the way, guys, this is part 1. This is part 1 of our interview with Colin O'Brady, because part 2 will be when him and his best friend Lucas, Josh and I are going to interview him when he breaks that 11th world record. It's so exciting, and I can't wait to see you do it and actually be a part of that. I've never actually been live when someone's broken a world record, so I'm really, really excited. And we're going to bring a crew of GoBundance guys and hopefully their wives and families to see this happen. So, Colin, as we close out, we'd love to, for our listeners to connect with you. Where can our listeners find you and learn more about you and all the great things you're into?
Yeah, my Instagram is my name at Colin O'Brady. It's a good place to start. We definitely, that's where we'll post all the live stuff from the race across America. We got a social media team. We'll be in live tracking and all that kind of stuff. So there'll be content between now and then as well, but you track us live there. My website, colinobrady.com. You can find out all information. I do a lot of public speaking. If anyone has companies want to bring folks in for things of that nature, all my books are listed there. And then the 12-hour walk, I really couldn't recommend it enough. Like I said, it is free, but it's something that will have a huge return on investment of your mind, body, and soul. So the book is the 12-hour walk. You can find that anywhere, books, Amazon, your local bookstore, etc. Or just check out the website, 12hourwalk.com. If you don't even want to bother reading the book, don't read the book. Go to 12hourwalk.com, learn about the walk, and just walk out your front door. I think it'll be better if you read the book, but literally, I've already described it. You could do it right now based on that. Just set your phone down, walk out the front door right now. But check out 12hourwalk.com, all the information on the walk, and you can sign up for free there.
Ullman and I were talking about you this morning. He's a junior high guy, and we were talking about the 12-hour walk. He goes, wait a second, I've seen that book on your desk. So he's excited to meet you sometime soon, and we appreciate everything you're doing, buddy.
Amazing. Cheers. Grateful for you for having me.
Cheers.
Damn straight. We just got buddy. We got to the end of another great show, and everyone listening right now, you're the family and friends. Thanks for staying till the end.
That was so fun. And hey, hit the like, hit subscribe. We're here to serve you guys. That's why we're doing this show. Josh is not paying me. I'm doing this off of my quote unquote sweat equity because we want to make a difference in your life. And then that ripple effect will continue to touch the world.
Hey, amen, brother. Please check us out on capitalhacking.com, all the social media threads. And yes, I know you've probably already sent this episode to one of your best friends. Thank you. We love you. Just go right into your iPhone, hit the plus symbol. We'll talk to you later. See you next week.
Share.